Sometimes it takes one a little longer than the other.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay, good to go. Okay, I'm going to call the meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals to order. The reason for our meeting today is to consider, first we're going to consider application 2023-017. The applicant is ASD Seneca, Illinois Solar LLC. The request is for a conditional use permit to allow for a commercial solar energy facility. It's part of PIN number 12-33-300-004. The property consists of approximately 41.851 acres and is located on the north side of Ocock Road, approximately 1/2 mile east of the intersection of Ocock and Dunham Road in Seneca Township, Illinois. This petition has been reviewed and the following items have been received prior to today's hearing. The publisher's certificate of publication from a newspaper is dated April 29, 2023, and thereby meets ordinance requirements. The affidavit of posting was signed, and the date posted was May 1, 2023. The affidavit of mailing was signed, and the date mailed was April 28, 2023. The survey has been checked against the petition, the legal notice, and the publication in the newspaper, and all three match. The filing fees have been paid. The endangered species consultation has been received, and the McHenry County Soil and Water Conservation District report has been received. It would be NRI number 23-027-4487. At this time, I'd like to introduce the board members. They will introduce themselves and the name of the township in which they reside. I'll start on my right.
Jessica Beverly, Door Township.
Kurt Schnabel, Riley Township.
I'm Linnea Kustra in Alden Township.
I'm Charlie Eldridge, Richmond Township.
I'm Robert Cozen, Algonquin Township.
And we have the petitioner here. Anyone that in the public besides the petitioner that will be asking a question or wanting to give a comment, now's the time I would swear you in. So anyone that would like to make a comment, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I did.
Okay, the way our hearing works for members of the public that are here is that the petitioner will present their case to us, and then they will be asked questions by each board member, and then also by the staff. Then if any of the members of the public have a question regarding his testimony, it has to be a question. You are allowed to do that at that time. We try and limit it to like 3 minutes per person for questions. So if someone's asked a question, I would ask you to try and do something else maybe that hasn't been covered. And then after they're done, then the staff will give a summary of their report to the ZBA, and then they will be asked questions by the staff as well. Then when everything's finished, the petitioner will give their summary, why they feel this should be approved. At that time, anyone from the public that wants to give a comment, whether you oppose or agree with this project, that would be your time to do so. And again, we have 3 minutes for each person. But before we start, because we've had a change in the state, I'm going to let Kim or Anna just give you an update. The state legislature passed a new law in January that affects us as a county and our ability, what our ability is to do with the solar farm. So I'm going to turn it over to Kim to kind of give us a report here.
Yeah, so for anyone that was not here previously, just reiterate that the state did pass a new law at the end of January of this year, outlining specific siting requirements for solar facilities in Illinois. And as long as the facilities that are being proposed in the counties can meet these minimum standards, the county does not have the ability to deny them. We can place specific conditions that might alleviate any concerns as far as screening, vegetation, things like that. But the county does not have the ability to deny a request if they do meet those minimum requirements set forth by the state.
Okay, so at this time, I will turn it over to the petitioner. Would you please introduce yourself, your company, and then just go through whatever presentation you have for us?
Certainly. Hello. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the board, for including me in today's hearing. My name is Mike Larkin. I am a project manager on the development team at AMP Energy, based out of Denver, Colorado. And we are reviewing two projects today. First one being ASD Seneca Illinois Solar LLC. You said just to jump right into the presentation.
Sure.
So the name of the project is ASD Seneca Illinois Solar LLC. Every project we give a project company name, and so the ASD at the beginning there is just an acronym for AMP Solar Development, just a tag that we put on the beginning of all our project names. And then, being in Seneca County is what influenced the naming there. We can go to the next slide, please.
Seneca Township, right?
Oh, Seneca Township, I'm sorry. So the agenda here, I'll just give a brief intro to AMP Energy, AMP US. Then I'll give a brief explanation of community solar and how it works. Then I'll go through the project components and the tentative schedule. And then lastly, I'll probably just walk up with the mic to run through the site plan and the components of this particular project. So AMP Energy is an independent power producer. We develop, own, and operate renewable energy assets across the country. Like I said, the company is based in Denver, Colorado, and we currently are either developing, operating projects in New Mexico, Illinois, Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, and looking at a couple other states, but not currently operating in them. AMP Energy develops in community solar development. These projects are typically anywhere from 2 megawatts to 5 megawatts AC. That's the connection size. The actual capacity itself with panels is sometimes oversized beyond that, so we can produce max power for a longer period of the day. But these projects typically take up anywhere from, I would say, 20 to 45, 50 acres, depending on the size of a project. And these projects are distributed scale projects, so they connect to the existing distributed utility infrastructure, typically 34.5 kilovolt lines or lower, and feed in power to the grid through the distributed system. Community solar is unique in that we can get subscribers who are within the same utility and pay a utility bill. And what happens is once we connect to the grid, the project itself starts producing solar credits based on its production. Those credits go to the subscribers of the solar project, so typically we size the project, we predict how much we expect it to produce in a year, and then we're able to get the number of subscribers that we can to fill that would basically be the number of subscribers and their average load use, and the aggregation of all that to equal the total power output of what the solar farm would output every year. So it would be every month where the project puts its power to the grid, produces credits based on the size of the subscription that the solar subscriber has, which is based on their electricity usage. We'll get credits based on that subscription amount and based on the generation for that month. And so those credits are applied to the utility customer's bill, and that provides a discount on their power, typically 10%, but we have seen values greater than that. So typically a 10% discount on their power that the credits are applied to, and so we end up settling the credits with the utility itself, and so you just get one bill that is from your utility. In this case, it's ComEd this project is connecting to, and so yeah, it's a way to virtually buy power from the solar farm itself and receive a discount on your bill for that power. Great, so I'll just go through the tentative schedule here, and just to note, this is a pretty optimistic schedule. This is probably as fast as we could see the project move forward. So yeah, right here we are in June, here for the local use permit. If this were to be recommended for approval, then it would be going on to another board for another vote. I think that would be in July for this site, and then eventually, if that goes as planned, then the project would be issued its permit. Once the project's issued its permit, that's kind of the last piece here at AMP Energy or for the project that would need to qualify for the state incentive program. The Illinois Power Agency has the adjustable block program, which was set capacity, I believe it's 1,600 megawatts across ComEd and Ameren, of community solar capacity that's in this program, and we'd be applying to that bucket of capacity. We need the permit in place, and so that would be the next step after this. The Illinois Power Agency takes some time to review those applications. The last time around, we probably saw a 4-month turnaround. They are telling us they're getting faster and more efficient, so by the earliest, we think it would be by the end of August that they would get back to us on whether or not we were successful with our application. Assuming ASD Seneca is successful in receiving its incentive award, then we would work towards the construction permit, so that would be advancing the civil designs, doing the stormwater design, basically getting all the prerequisites in order for the building permit that would be issued through the county. And then we would look to submit those materials by the end of the year to move towards the construction permit. If assuming that goes smoothly, then the next step here would be the start of construction here in May. I believe, not sure if Seneca, but I definitely know Coral has road use restrictions for weighted vehicles in the winter and springtime. So we'd probably be looking to start late spring if we're able to do so, with construction completed by mid-summer 2024, so July 2024, and becoming operational at the end of summer 2024. So that would be completely built and connected to the grid and producing and providing power. The Illinois Community Solar Program overview, that's what I was talking about earlier, that program that we're applying to. And for this array, we're implementing a pollinator-friendly certification and agrivoltaics. We working with a consultant, United Agrivoltaics, who has sourced a seed mix for us based on the local soils and the local environment. That is a combination of both grazer-friendly vegetation as well as pollinator-friendly vegetation. We'd have 2 seed mixes, one for directly underneath the array and one for sort of the buffers in between the array and the fence itself. 2 seed mixes, and the one under the array would be more fascicules, grasses, less pollinators, but still some more sheep-friendly crops. And in the buffers, there would be higher growing vegetation, things like milkweed that are important to monarch butterflies, and various other pollinators. But at certain concentrations aren't very good for sheep, so we're kind of going with a balance there. But yeah, definitely more pollinators in the buffer areas. And that would be the undergrowth to stabilize the soil itself underneath the array, and to help keep the soil in good condition as it lays fallow through the lifetime of the solar project. And just to go into that a little bit more, We would expect grazing mobilization to happen at least twice a year during the warm season. It would probably be 2 to 3 sheep per acre per mobilization. And they would likely be there 1 to 2 weeks at a time to finish the job. Sheep isn't our only form of operation and maintenance in terms of the vegetation. We are proposing some vegetative screens, so those will need to be monitored and taken care of if plants aren't taking or establishing. And then, sometimes grazing isn't enough, and maybe it needs mowed down, so every now and then, but we're going to see if we can prevent regularly mowing with the mobilization of grazers here. And then just lastly, I want to touch on the decommissioning plan. The county requires us to have a decommissioning plan in place and a surety or some sort of financial instrument funded, I believe, to 150% of the estimate of the decom estimate value. So it gives you a little bit of buffer there to make sure in the event that AMP Energy abandons the site, goes bankrupt, and the company doesn't take care of the decommissioning itself, then this financial surety would be in place for the county to draw upon to pay contractors to remove and disassemble and dispose and recycle the components of the array. We don't think it will come to that because AMP is interested in being the long-term owner and operator. We would fully want to decommission it ourselves, but this project's lifetime is a minimum of at least 20 years, so it is a decent amount in the future, so you do have to have these protections in place. We also have a agricultural impact mitigation agreement that was executed with the Illinois Department of Agriculture, and that also has its own decommissioning standards that we're required to follow. Similar to the counties, maybe even a little more advanced, but they specify, like everything 5-foot subgrade or anything 4-foot subgrade needs to be removed, and the coordination that goes on with that. Next, we can get into the array itself. I might just come up to the screen here so I can point around. So here we are in Seneca Township. This is Ocock Road. We're proposing the gravel access road. So here's the parcel itself that goes pretty far back into the land off the road. We're proposing a gravel road with an apron here immediately across from the existing road that tees off of Ocock here, and goes directly north up into the site. And you can see it's pretty straightforward, very straight, all the way to the equipment pad, which hosts the inverter, transformer, combiner box equipment. Basically, the array itself has a bunch of strings, wires that run the length of the tables that get put in conduits and put into the ground, and combiner boxes at the equipment pad itself. The equipment pad is composed of concrete and gravel. The whole base itself will be concrete, and that's really, other than the gravel road and the equipment pad, those are really the only introductions of impervious surface to the site itself. But anyway, all the wires are combined here. They're put to the inverter, and then the transformer, and then there is an underground line, which is signified by this dashed red line, parallel to the access road that will exit the site, and then will be hoisted up on riser poles. I believe we have 4 poles down here, each with different electrical equipment, and then finally connecting to an existing pole off of Ocock Road here on the 34.5 kilovolt line. Other than that, the site itself is surrounded by this 8-foot fence. We are proposing it's like a agricultural style fixed knot fence, basically just square mesh that's metal that surrounds the site, prevents unwanted access, and protects members from the public if they're having to walk on from accessing any of the high voltage electrical equipment. There's a small gap there at the fence itself to allow the passage of small wildlife. And that, like I said, that fence completely surrounds the site with a gate at the access road itself with a Knox box for emergency access. You can see we're proposing vegetative screen, which is this green sort of dotted rectangle here that goes the length. On the south side here to obscure views from Oak Hawk Road, as well as the abutter here to the southwest. And we are proposing a vegetative screen on the western end of the property to block viewpoints from residential abutters to the west here. The array itself is composed of panels that are kind of stacked on one another like this, and they are on a tracker system. Kim, I'm not sure if you want to go to the side profile, so I could just kind of show what that looks like. Anyway, so yeah, these panels are oriented north and south, and they're sitting on a racking system, which is basically just steel I-beams pounded into the ground every so often. And so you remember the north to south oriented tables here. This is like if I was on the south side looking north directly at a table. So you can see the panels are hoisted on the tracking system itself, and it rotates throughout the day. It'll be at its max tilt at early morning and late evening. Early morning it'll be to the east, and then it'll slowly rotate throughout the day to track the sun, and then be at its maximum angle towards the west at sunset to maximize irradiance capture and energy production. And other than that, let's see if there's anything else I forgot to cover. Yeah, row spacing is about 25.5 feet, so they are relatively spaced, and that's to prevent shadowing losses from one row over to the next row. Also, with the tracking technology and that spacing, we're able to basically minimize any shading from another row onto another one to maximize energy production. This black hatched area here is the construction laydown area. This is where we would plan to set down the equipment when it's all being delivered, as well as having the construction vehicle parking and the various construction personnel that will be on site to build it. Other than that, I believe that's all the components I wanted to cover here. And just to say, yeah, so our AC size, so the connection size, at any given moment, we could inject a maximum of 4.998, so just under 5 megawatts into the grid at any given time. And the actual DC size of all the panels and their aggregate capacities combined is just under 7.5 megawatts, and that allows us to boost to that 5 megawatt power rating for a longer period of the day. Great. That concludes my presentation on ASD Seneca.
Conditional standards.
Mike, you've covered the standards really well for the site development standards as to what we require in the ordinance. Do you want, and also in your report, do you want to just incorporate that in what's in your report for that, the site development standards?
Certainly, yeah, I'd like to incorporate the answers in the application into the hearing record for the site development standards.
There's also the standards for use for conditional use request, and I know you covered them well in your report, but I wondered if you would just summarize like each point.
Certainly.
That would be like under 16.56. So like if I just ask you a question, you just summarize it. So is the conditional use compatible with the existing and planned future development of the area?
Yes, it is zoned as A1 agricultural, so this use is allowed through conditional use permit. I'm sorry. Which one's this?
That is question number 2. I don't know what page it is in your report, but these pages aren't numbered that I have. That would be from your submittal of your application. I don't think it's
Oh.
in the staff report.
Oh, got it, okay.
Okay, so number 3 is the conditional use detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, morals, comfort, or general welfare of the area?
No, it does not. Solar development is a relatively passive development. Like I said, it can be decommissioned and the land can kind of go back to a former use after the operational lifetime. There's no hazardous materials that are able to leach into the ground or affect the water table. There are some rare earth elements contained within the panel itself, but that's fully encased within the panel, and very small amounts that will not touch water and will be forever sort of inside the panel itself. There will be fencing around that will prevent access to the electrical equipment that could be dangerous if mishandled incorrectly. Just a relatively low profile development that will not get a lot of public access or use in terms of just physically being there. It proposes limited, it introduces limited detriment or danger to the community.
Will the conditional use be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the area?
It will not. As I've showed, we are proposing the vegetative screens. It shouldn't be that much of an impact other than, on view sheds and what was once a farm field, will now be a solar array. But like I said, we plan to use vegetative screens to obscure those views, the residential butters, as much as reasonably possible. The array itself, the inverter is the only thing that makes noise. It's about the same noise level as like a refrigerator compressor. At a minimum, or the equipment pad itself is at least 350 feet from any property line. And so, houses are even further away, so noise is very minimal. The panels have anti-glare coating, so they reflect very little light. So none of that should be a nuisance to the reasonable enjoyment of all the properties abutting this parcel.
Will the conditional use substantially diminish and impair property value in the area?
I have not found evidence of that. I know there are some evidence that's been submitted from the public that refers to various studies. I have looked at 2 studies, actually one that was conducted in McHenry County, I believe. It might be a little dated though, 5-6 years ago, that I believe I included in the application itself.
You did. It was something that the developer Cypress Creek Renewables presented in 2018.
Got it. So, based on that study, I didn't see any evidence of that, and I will say, solar, although it has a minimum, or this project in particular, they have a 20-year minimum lifetime. It's a good way to preserve a more permanent prevent more permanent and a less favorable development from occurring on this parcel for at least the given lifetime of the solar farm itself. And the unused land around it will likely still be used for farming. And so, even if there is evidence that it could make an effect on assessed values, I think it's a good way to help prevent further development down the line. and helps keep the agricultural nature of the property itself.
Are adequate utilities, access roads, drainage, and other necessary facilities provided?
Yep, we'll make sure we have proper drainage developed in the stormwater plan and the SWIP as a part of advancing towards that construction permit. It doesn't require any sort of water connection or sewer connection, and obviously we'll have the utility connection, but it won't rely on grid power. It will be supplying grid power.
Has the conditional use operation been designed to provide ingress and egress to minimize traffic congestion and hazard on the public streets?
Yes, we do have the apron on the driveway itself, and then we have the construction laydown area. So during probably the most busy period would obviously be the construction period in terms of access, panels and racking components being delivered. They should be able to quickly get off the street and into the site. And then beyond construction, it's probably 2 guys in a truck once a quarter, once every 3 months, accessing the site, so it should be of a minimal impact on traffic.
And will the conditional use conform to the applicable standards of the underlying zoning district?
Yes, as currently designed, the project will comply to the applicable use standards. With its setbacks and height constraints.
Okay, we'll start with questions from the board, starting on my right, Ms. Beverly.
Thank you. I wanted to go back to when you were talking about the decommissioning plan. There's been some questions in the past about what happens if a company goes bankrupt, and is there a decommissioning plan? In your experience, if AMP were to go bankrupt in 10 years, would this be decommissioned or would it be sold off because it's still generating electricity and fully functional?
I believe it would be sold off. I can't say for certain, but once it's built and the incentive is received and it's providing power to the grid and the construction has been complete and everything, it is a valuable asset. So I would assume if AMP were to go bankrupt and whoever takes control of our assets, I would assume they would want to keep it operating since we'll be making money as long as it stays operational. These panels that we propose to install, I believe they have a 25-year warranty, so they should be good for at least 25 years. Like I said, the state program itself of where we would get money for producing electricity lasts 20 years. So I would believe, just given if the state is still dishing out money for the project to continue operating and providing the grid with power, I wouldn't see why the new owner would decommission it prematurely if it's still in good shape, which, like I said, should be the panels to have that warranty. But yeah, if it didn't make sense for them, then yeah, I'm sure they would either decommission or based on, I think, the county's definition of if it's not operational for a certain period of time, then it could be forced to be decommissioned. And so then, if the new owner was not interested in taking responsibility for that, then the county would be able to pull upon those funds to get it done.
Thank you. If you could go back to the site plan, Kim. I just wanted to look at this. So in your testimony, you said that the inverters will be located in the center of the array and that they're not expected to make more than an air conditioner amount of noise. Do you know how far away the nearest residence is from the center of the array?
I don't know off the top of my head. I know we did just a quick measurement, like on our mapping tool on the site plan itself, and I was seeing at least 350 feet from that western property line to the equipment pad.
Okay, thank you. And as far as the buffer goes, outside of the fence for the residences on the left-hand side, is that required by ordinance based on the feet that it's from, or was that an option that AMP put in the revised plan?
I do not believe that was a requirement from the ordinance. Well, I'd have to double check, but we are definitely beyond the setback that is required. That I think in this particular scenario, this is a matter of just courtesy and making sure we can shield the array from abutters that we've heard from and that we've talked to that are concerned about their change in view shed.
So that's not required by state law and it's not required by our ordinance. It is something that AMP has taken it upon themselves to install and maintain?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And as far as the buffer for the road goes, same deal?
As far as buffer from the road?
Right, the buffer from the road is not required by the state ordinance or by our county ordinance. It is just something that AMP has taken upon themselves.
I believe there is a, I have to look at the, pull it up. I believe there is a 300-foot requirement from the county.
Are you talking about the screening? Or
The screening, the vegetative screening for
Oh,
buffer.
yeah. No, yeah, you're right. There's no requirement there. Well, I believe the county does say you need to sufficiently provide vegetative screening from residential.
But not from the road.
Correct, yes. We just figured there's residences across the street there, so we just wanted to be safe that.
And I'm sorry, can I just correct that there is a requirement that if the road is within 500 feet of the facility, that there be vegetative screening there.
Okay.
So.
And as far as the vegetative buffer goes versus not doing a vegetative buffer, do you have any cost estimates on what it is to maintain a buffer per per linear foot or anything?
Not off the top of my head. I believe currently in our internal model we have 7 to 8 cents per watt of sort of operational vegetative maintenance costs. I'm not sure if we fully baked in, whether we'd have to like replace a tree if there was like a failure of the establishment, but internally we typically model 7 to 8 cents a watt. I'm not sure what that would come out. I'd have to multiply it by the capacity here, but no, I don't have a specific estimate for you there.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Schnuck?
In a similar vein, I'd like to follow up with my colleague's question on the pollinators and the buffers. Having lived on 5 acres myself, I know it's sometimes difficult to keep things growing where you want them to grow. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the pollinators that would be, just to reiterate, inside underneath the solar array itself is more grazing friendly to the sheep as opposed to outside, which is less appealing or healthy or whatever have you for the sheep. That would be important. This is our first solar farm employing sheep that I could think of in recent history. My question is regarding the maintenance. You've addressed the cost somewhat. How does it work? If after a period of 2 years everything gets totally out of whack and what was outside is now growing inside, and how is that amended and taken care of?
Yeah, so as a part of our materials that we'll put together to submit for construction permit, we plan to have a fully baked operation and maintenance plan. At that point, like I said, we're working with a consultant called United Agrivoltaics. It's a co-op of farmers with access to 6,000 sheep across the state. And they're also, some of them are also, the grass seed experts too in terms of establishment. So we plan to work with them and our EPC team to help establish the site, make sure we're planting at the right time, whether it should be hydro seed or something else, and the time of year of which that will be applied. So we plan to use their guidance to maximize our chances of success in establishing the crop of, they call it the fuzz and buzz mix. And then the state itself, for being evaluated for this incentive, one of the things it's a point system, and one of the ways you can get a point is this commitment to agrivoltaics. So that's why we're pursuing this route. But the state requires yearly reports to be submitted to them every year. And so the farmer that we hire out for this, we would also, in that contract, there would be certain reporting requirements where they get back to us on, what's growing where, what are the sheep eating, how's it doing, whether there's an invasive species that is encroached that needs to be taken care of, whether, the undergrowth and the seeding from that itself has started to spread from the wind or to other properties. And so we'll be required to have those reports regularly on a yearly basis, and then we'll contract our farmers and our operation and maintenance folks to ensure that they need to include that piece in their monitoring and report to us. And then through the Agricultural Impact Mitigation Agreement, we're also required to take care of any sort of species that happens to migrate into an abutting farmer field and starts to become an issue. We are responsible for mitigating that. So whether that would be spot herbicide treatment or physical removal of those plants, that would be on us per the requirements of the state there too.
Next question, who actually prepares the report? Would it be the farmer on your behalf? How does that work?
It probably, it will probably be a combination of United Agrivoltaics, which is the consultant we've been working with, AMP and our operations folks and their knowledge, and the farmer would really just be contracted to obviously use their sheep and mobilize them, but also to report on the results. So I'm sure we could hire them to do some of this work in terms of the control of the undergrowth, but we'll likely have a separate team that will work on that will contract out.
All right. I believe you mentioned earlier that you have service trucks go in there probably once a quarter, so obviously the farmer's going to need access to probably more than once a quarter. Is he free to get in there anytime he wants via the Knox box, or does he have to receive prior permission?
That's a good question. Yeah, I'm sure we could make it accessible via the Knox box. We haven't executing these contracts with farmers yet. We do have sort of a form doc for it. We plan for it to be a 3-year contract that we'd have to renew. And if the farmer is no longer interested after the 3 years, then using another farmer within United Agrivoltaics co-op network to take over. But yeah, those details would be figured out in the specifics of the contract itself. But yeah, theoretically, the only access is that gate itself through the access road, so they'll need to have a way in. Yep.
That's all I have for the moment. Thank you.
Mr. Eldridge.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Does your company own the land, or have you leased the land?
For AST Seneca, we have this land under purchase option. So if this project does move forward, then we will execute the purchase option, and AMP Energy will own the land. Or maybe not. Well, yeah, maybe our land holding company, which is an entity under AMP Energy, but yeah.
An affiliated controlled entity.
Yep.
And that's the entire site, not just the parcel for the, is it the entire 40 or 60 acres? Or is it just the site for the panels?
It would be the entire parcel, yep, beyond the panels too, yep.
Okay, so it's possible, if the economics are right, that this would last longer than 20 years, and you would have the right, if you chose, subject to government regulations, to put new panels up at some future date and continue generating electricity there.
Correct.
Okay. I think that's all I have right now. Thank you.
Mr. Cozen.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Some of my reference, the questions goes to the IFP site plan that I'm going to do. Just to orientate myself correctly, the parcel area is 74 acres. Is that correct?
Correct, yep.
Can you explain the reference to an existing impervious surface area of 5,773 square feet? What makes that value?
That is the lower southwest corner, the existing driveway, the corn silos, and the, I believe those are raised buildings, but their foundations are still there.
So by some formula then, out of 74 acres, only 5,773 is impervious, or will be impervious from this calculation?
That's existing conditions, so that's at this time, yes, only just over 5,000 square feet are currently impervious.
And then how much impervious area would you be adding? Would you know that, or?
I don't have that listed on here, but the road itself is 20 feet wide. I would guess it's...
But isn't that could be a gravel constructed roadway?
Yeah, I guess different jurisdictions have different, I guess, definitions of impervious. So we just assume that gravel's impervious, although I guess technically it's not. The equipment pad itself will probably be 80 by 100 feet, so that would be about 800 square feet concrete pad. And then a very tiny portion of impervious surface itself, I guess you could view as, is the racking posts that are pounded into the ground. There will be a good bit of them, but they have a very small cross-sectional surface area because they're I-beams. So I guess that's the sort of last component of introduction of impervious surface.
Continuing on in that table, you have the reference for the PV inverters. Is that correct, that you'll have 2 for the entire site?
That's correct, yes. Those are 2,500 kilowatt inverters, and then this site is just under 5,000 kilowatts, so it'll be 2 of those inverters, and they'll be downsized slightly. Yeah, they're pretty big inverters.
So, and they're working only, let me phrase it somewhat, only sunrise to sunset?
That's correct, yep.
So that humming of the refrigerator sound won't occur once the sun has set?
Correct.
And on those inverters, the manufacturing type uses what kind of cooling system? Would you know that?
I'm not aware. I know we use, I'm not sure if it's the inverter, the transformer has like a biodegradable, almost like mineral oil that's pumped through it. I'm not sure if the inverter uses the same. But yeah, I don't have that off the top of my head at this time.
But you're not aware that it uses any kind of fan or pump or anything in that regard that would add to that noise or contribute to the noise?
I believe it does have a fan. That's part of the what I call the refrigerator compressor noise. Yep.
And so the inverter pad, just to go back to that, appears to be using your around 1,200 feet north of Oak Road. That just.
Yep. Yeah, that looks about right. Yep.
And that the panels towards North Union Road. It's about 1,300 feet west of North Union Road.
North Union is to the east there?
That's correct. It's not labeled on your drawing, but for local people, we know it as North Union Road. Is that,
Yeah, yeah, it looks like the width of the frontage of the parcel we're developing on is just over 1,150 feet. It looks like the width of that parcel to the east along Union Road is at least that width. So yeah, I'd say at least 1,200 feet is what that looks like, yep.
and the panels, as you said, your driveway is, if as constructed, is due north of County Line Road,
Correct.
and the panels, as they're orientated, they're perpendicular to Ocock Road?
Yes, correct.
Would you know how long the timing of the panel is as it moves from its easterly to westerly duration in that sunrise to sunset?
Yeah, that would be dependent on, I guess, the length of the day. So, well, we're getting pretty close to the solstice here. I think you get about 13 hours of sunlight here at the solstice, maybe 13 and a half. So that would probably be the max period of time of what they would take to go fully facing east to fully facing west. And then that rotation would be shortest, the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year, where I'm not exactly, is it, I think 8 hours of daylight, 7. But yeah, so anywhere from probably 7 to 13 and a half hours it could take to do that full rotation.
Of 180 degrees, or parallel with the horizon, so to speak.
Yeah, not quite 180 degrees. There'll probably be a maximum slope of 55 tilt on both sides. But yeah.
In terms of your electrical conduit, what is the average buried depth?
Typically 4 feet.
4 feet.
3 to 4 feet, yep.
And these solar panels, they have just to reiterate, have an anti-glare coating on them?
That is correct, yes.
And they're bioreflective? I mean, they generate or receive current on both top and bottom, underside, so to speak?
Correct, yes. Bifacial, I believe, is what we're looking for there. Yep, yeah, so irradiance from the sun itself, from above, directly from the sun and scattered from the atmosphere, all contribute to electrical production at the sky-facing top of the solar cell. But with these bifacial panels, there's also a component of irradiance either reflected from the ground or reflected from the atmosphere near the ground, that it's also captured from the bottom, yep, and contributes to the potential over the capacitor and then the eventual energy production. So yeah, irradiance from both sides of the panel contribute to electrical production.
And then the artificial lighting that you're introducing is only a surface light, is that correct, around your work area?
That's correct. That would not regularly be lit. That would only be lit if it was getting serviced and I guess during the nighttime when there's a lack of light, yes.
I have no further questions, thank you.
Okay, I have a few questions myself. So regarding the sheep, watering. So you won't be drilling a well there or anything. A sheep farmer would just bring in like a stock tank and then come in and fill it as needed daily or every other day, or however is needed for the sheep, correct?
That is correct, yes.
And then decommissioning, does everything come out? Even the stuff way underground, everything comes out, correct?
Yes. Let me just make sure that is absolutely correct. Yeah, so the agricultural impact mitigation agreement, I believe, requires everything sub 5 feet. Like I said, our conduits are anywhere from 3 to 4 feet, so those will all be pulled out. Typically interested in scrapping the metal from those two, so those will be removed. The only thing, I guess, is depending on the landowner, which I guess will be Hemp Energy, usually it's the landowner's discretion on whether or not we keep the road. So that is something that could potentially remain, but when we further into the decommissioning agreement, you know, if it's a concern of the county, we can definitely, you know, ensure the road is a part of that scope.
I'm more concerned just about, you know, any kind of steel or whatever, you know, like the Soil Water Conservation District says anything down to 5 feet. But this is a sensitive aquifer recharge area. I just want everything out, so that you're okay with that.
Understood, yeah, and some of the piles themselves could probably go anywhere, depending on the composition of the soil, anywhere to 6 to 8 feet subsurface. But we wouldn't just like take the top 5 feet. I mean, it's a continuous I-beam post, so it would be sort of a machine loosening up top and then eventually pulling the whole thing out. It's not like we cut to a certain point and leave the rest below ground.
Okay. Now, I want you to kind of help me understand the block grant thing. So you said 1,600 megawatts for the block grant, and I know there was like a June 1st deadline for some things. Can you explain to me, like, how periodically, is there a certain amount that will be given out, like every 3 months? How that all is going to work?
Yeah, so in the adjustable block program, for the ComEd utility service territory, between last year and 2030, there is 120 megawatts of capacity released every year for traditional community solar. There's also other blocks too, one called distributed generation, one called public schools, another one called community-driven community solar. But the particular block that we're targeting here is called the traditional community solar block. It has a scoring system.
And that's the 120 megawatt?
Correct, yes.
In the whole ComEd area?
Correct, yes. For acronym TCS, traditional community solar. For TCS and ComEd, every year it's 120 megawatts, yep.
Okay, so go ahead.
And so the first year of the program, that started November 2022, and they released the first 120 megawatts of capacity within ComEd, and projects were free to apply on that November 1st date. In the event that more projects, so like the capacity of all projects combined, excuse me, I just need to clear my throat. In the event that the capacity is beyond the block size, which is what happened last November.
So you mean the amount of projects that are proposed is so much larger than what they're willing to give out, okay?
Correct. In the event that happens, they automatically default to a scoring system. So if only 120 megawatts applied on November 1st, 2022, then all 120 megawatts of projects would have been awarded, but that wasn't the case. I think it was around, I think it ended up being over 300, and then by the time they reviewed all the projects, the ones that they would qualify for this program, ended up being around 200. Yeah, let's say 200 qualified and applied, then they automatically switch to the point scoring system. You can get points through a variety of, I guess, scoring parameters. One citing the actual location of the array itself, whether it's in like an environmental justice community, if it's avoiding, I forget the term, it's like it's basically like sensitive habitats, your deducted points if you're, encroaching into those sort of things.
So there's a way to add points and then also deduct points if you're putting in an area that they really don't want solar farms.
Correct. And So anyway, applications exceeded block capacity, switched to the point system, and you need a minimum of 5 points within the system to qualify, and then the projects with the highest level of points all received capacity in that first block, or at least I believe there were probably 10 projects with points, around 9 or 10 points. I think the maximum you can get is 12 points. And so all those projects were awarded, but any project that achieved at least 5 points got put on a wait list. And then the next year's block, which actually occurred this past June 1st, June 2023, the second block opened up, another 120 megawatts became available, and all the projects that were on the wait list of last year's allocation are first in line for the capacity this year. So they were all awarded, and I believe there's still some capacity left, so now they're reviewing all the projects that were submitted on June 1st and deciding which projects get awarded capacity there. And then if a project isn't awarded but got 5 points, it's put on the wait list, and then it's put at the front of the line for June 1st, 2024. So it'll no longer be November, it'll be once a year, 120 megawatts every June 1st. So the next block will be June 1st, 2024, and the projects that are on the wait list will be front in line to receive the award next summer.
So you were talking about August, something that you'd like to find out. So you already submitted as of 1st of June?
No, we did not, because we're not eligible without a permit. That was, based, that schedule, like I said, was very optimistic, based on, something we put together before the June 1st date came around. We haven't seen any analysis on the number of projects that have applied and qualified for this time around, but we expect the capacity to be fully spoken for again. So it is likely that this project is submitted. It takes 2 or 3 months to review, and upon the end of that review, it will most likely be put on a wait list, since this year's capacity is more than likely, all spoken for, and so it would be front in line for the June 2024 allocation.
So chances are pretty good that this probably wouldn't go until June 2024, and then would be built maybe the following year.
Yeah, that's correct. More than likely, it'll be waitlist and then eligible next year. By some miracle, though, we could, if a lot of these projects are bad projects that don't qualify that have applied, then I guess there is a slight chance that it could make the allocation this year, but it's more than likely next year.
That's really helpful to me in understanding how that works. Thank you very much. Does staff have any questions for the petitioner?
I have no questions at this time. Can I ask a follow-up?
Sure.
As far as the adjustable block program goes, assuming that you're waitlisted for 3 years and then you suddenly get wrecked and you haven't done your interconnection or anything like that already, and you find out that it's completely cost prohibitive, the project dies. In your experience, on average, how often does that happen for projects that have gone through this process?
So we are pursuing interconnection at the moment. We are in the study process. Part of the scoring system for the program itself is whether you have an executed interconnection agreement and whether you have a top 2 queue position on the line where your point of interconnection is proposed. With that said, we don't have the full results of our utility study for ASD Seneca yet. We expect those within the next few months. So that will, give us a good indication of whether the project will be economical, whether it be feasible, and whether we should move forward. But right now, trying to work with ComEd, because they have their own rules, and like how far after you sign the interconnection agreement do you have to have your proposed in-service date. And there's been a little bit of a disconnect, because we're like, well, the state has this program where, like you said, theoretically, we could be waitlisted, potentially multiple years, depending on how big the wait list is. And ComEd, I believe, has a 12 to 15 month in-service date requirement from when you provide the full funds for the interconnection agreement, which occurs right after you sign it, to the in-service date. I think there's a 12-month extension that we could go for there. But yes, there is the chance, if interconnection looks good, and the wait list is huge, and maybe 2 or 3 years in size, there is the chance that we would move forward with the project before we receive the incentive, and then after it's built, assuming it's on the wait list, and then say a year after it's built, maybe it is awarded that incentive, and then we would reclaim that. But yeah, there is a chance that if the interconnection looks good and the wait list is long, that we would move forward with the project before receiving the incentive. But to answer your question on, I guess, probabilities, I'd say we do believe we have a path to qualify this project, so that's one piece. Interconnection is the other piece. We've seen a pretty big range in results here. I'd say maybe 50% of projects die from unmanageable interconnection costs.
So just to reiterate what you said, in general, we're seeing lots and lots of solar farm projects. You have 3 for this county this year. 50% of them will have stumbling blocks after this process and eventually never get built.
That's correct. I would maybe even potentially more, but yeah, I'm not sure what other developers are in their plan to get qualified for the incentive. We believe we have a pretty solid chance at receiving it for this project and the next one, but yeah, if you're all of a sudden hit with interconnection that's multiple millions of dollars beyond what you expected it to cost, then yeah, that could very easily kill a project.
Thank you.
Okay, now's the time for anyone from the public wanting to ask a question. If you'd like to ask a question, you need to state your name, your address, and then you'll have 3 minutes to ask questions regarding the testimony. Sure, come on up.
All right, my name is,
Flip toward you. There's like a switch. There you go.
start my clock yet.
I'm not starting your clock.
Test.
Yeah.
It's on now.
Okay, I am Gina Lefevre. I live at 17,000 Secor Road in Seneca Township area, and I've been a resident for 34 years. So I've got a bunch of questions, so I'll make it really quick. So first of all, is a solar factory considered A1? Is it agriculture?
Yes, this is an A1 agricultural zoned parcel.
It's zoned that way, but are you considered that once you put your factory in there?
No, I believe the use is a sustainable energy system, or I forget the exact terminology from the county, but solar energy system, maybe.
So you become a
classified.
factory, so you should be taxed as a factory, not as A1 agricultural land.
Correct. We'll be assessed and taxed as
A
a
factory,
as a distributed energy production facility. Yep.
a factory, okay. So where do you have factories that are over 10 to 20 years old? AMP Energy started in the U.S. in 2008, so we don't have any that are 10 to 20 years old at this time. I believe we have 2 or 3 8-year-old projects in Minnesota right now, so those are probably our oldest projects at this time. Okay, so you don't have a lot of history then on decommissioning and errors that happen with it then?
Correct. Yeah. I don't believe any of our projects have been decommissioned yet.
I would hate to be your first example of that. Okay, also, there are many places to put a solar factory. Why are you picking our area?
We have our land origination team. They look for land, so buildability, obviously the topography, soil type, but probably the most important thing is the utility infrastructure. We try to target lines. ComEd comes out with this hosting capacity map once a year that maps all of their lines and how much capacity they have on each one. And so we basically look for land along that, buildable land along that, where we're able to interconnect. And also with the incentive program, some of the siting parameters there, we also look for those things.
Okay, so why would a person tap into your factory instead of having an individual solar panel?
Not everyone can develop solar on their own land. So yeah, this is just a good way. Also, commercial off-takers, larger anchors, small businesses, things like that, are all eligible to be subscribers. So yeah, anyone who's not interested in putting panels on their roof or developing solar themselves can still buy solar energy from this project.
So if our power goes out, the solar doesn't back that up, does it?
That's a good question. I don't believe so. It's up to the discretion of ComEd on whether they want to cut off the production of the array or not. But I think, yeah, power is typically shut off because there's some issue within the grid itself, and so this project is connected to that same grid. So if that issue is on a line that this is connected to, then I'm sure.
Bottom line, we lose power, yours doesn't help. Okay, and one more question.
Your time is up.
Oh, the subscriber's radius.
Anyone who's a utility ratepayer in ComEd is able to subscribe.
All right, would anyone else like to? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Renee Hill, and I live at 17910 Harmony Road. That's Marengo. I'm here representing Coral Township. Bill Damish, the township supervisor, did send out a letter prior.
Is this for questions or?
And I was going to read his letter.
Oh, that'll be later in the meeting. You could do that.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you have any questions right now, though, for him?
I did. When you, well, I'll think about it. I'll bring it.
Okay, yeah, because
thanks.
you'll have 3 minutes to read your letter and add any other
Okay.
comments later.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to ask questions of the petitioner? Yes, ma'am.
So after all of that, I have more questions than answers. So I'd like to get my
Please,
questions.
you gotta
Hello, my name
introduce
is
yourself.
Sandy Schultz. I live at 5808 Dunham Road. This is me. I'm hugely invested in this. I have questions that I'd like to ask, and then on my 3 minutes, and then after that, you can use your time to answer them. So when we had discussed before, we had a Zoom meeting, you had said that there would be a discount for subscribers of 10%. But during that meeting, you said there was a discount only on the delivery fee from Commonwealth Edison. I'd like you to clear that up in a minute. You had mentioned milkweeds and some other plants. This land is sand. It is dry as a bone. Milkweeds, I'm not sure. I think they require a wet soil. So I'm not sure someone has done the research in regards to the plants that are going to be necessary to grow. So then, who estimates the value of the decommission? I know what you're saying it is now, but what will it be in 10, 20 years? And then how far is that fence off of the lot line? That's a question mostly that I'm concerned with.
You mean the western fence? by your
This fence
property?
right here, how far off of this lot line is it?
Okay.
And then my other question is, on your section E of approval standards, we talked about injurious and to the use and the enjoyment of the people that are connected, and that you said, where did you get your information that said it would not be affected? Because that's completely wrong. The noise is affected. We can hear a band playing on the Marengo High School field. What makes you think we can't hear a hum 300 feet from my house? So those things need to be addressed. And then the affected assessed value, you talk about a 2018 survey. I don't think, you're naive to think that it's not going to affect our property values. So of those questions that I've asked, you said there was, the humming would only occur between sunrise and sunset, but then you also said there was a pump sound after the sunset. So you kind of, I don't know, that was not a, didn't quite make sense to me. So is there a noise or isn't there? And then you said, I'm concerned about the roads, the traffic, the noise, and there is a community right across the street. I'm sure you guys are familiar with that. There are houses there. I don't think that the Section E approval of standards I'm sure they wouldn't agree either that this is not affecting their property values, their standards of enjoyment for property. Thank you.
Before he answers, I just want to remind you again about the state law, that if they meet the requirements for citing, the minimum requirements that the state requires, the county is not able to make any more stringent standards as to where they would be cited, as far as whether there's houses across the street or anything like that. It's the
But they do
state
have-
standards that have to be met.
But it does have to meet the Section E approval standard, which is the part about that it would not affect assessed value, that it would not be injurious to the
The
use
state
and
law
enjoyment.
takes precedence over those rules.
Excuse me?
The state law takes precedence over those rules.
So now we'll allow the petitioner to have an opportunity to answer your questions.
Thank you, Sandy. For the 10% discount on delivery fee, I know common utility ratepayers have like set or fixed fees every month related to the utility. And so I think in reference to that, the discount is applied to the delivery rate fee. So like whatever demand you've used multiplied by, you know, the rate of power, it would be a 10% discount on that. It wouldn't be a discount on like, there's like a bunch of, or I think there's a couple of just like smaller fees that are constant every month that each utility ratepayer is charged. So it wouldn't be applied to
Right.
that.
Well, from what our
That's his
conversation,
opportunity now to answer the questions. You can't talk anymore, you've had your 3 minutes.
I do recognize that it is Sandy. We are planning in our EPC phase to do some soil core tests to verify that the seed mixes we have chosen are the most appropriate, and we plan to modify them accordingly if we see soil that varies greatly from some of the public resources that we've used for that in terms of maps. The estimate on the decommissioning, I did provide one in the permit application. It's probably it's probably a low ball estimate, just because it was providing like $1 per megawatt value. The county itself requires us to get an engineer's estimate, so we'll have to have an engineer stamp on it, and they'll take account for all the pieces of the array itself that need to be broken down and either scrapped or recycled or thrown away and shipped off. And so that will be pretty detailed and have the engineer's stamp of approval on it. We're also required to provide 150% of that estimate, so provide some buffer beyond what the estimate calls for. I'm not sure of that. Noise after sunset, yeah, don't expect any noise after the sunset. I have visited one of these arrays before, an array that was actually smaller than this one, so the inverter was probably smaller, but the distance from the fence line to the inverter was smaller, and I couldn't hear it outside of the array. Yeah, no, don't expect any noise after sunset coming from the array itself. And then there was a fence distance question. Was it?
It was from the red line, the west red line by your panels to her property fence.
Got it. I might not have that in front of me, but I could follow up with you on that. In my estimate, just looking at the width of the setback, which is 50 feet, I would guess it's at least 200 feet.
So more than the minimum required.
Correct. I'm not sure if I missed anything, but that's all I had written down.
Okay, does anyone else from the public want to ask a question, petitioner? Okay, at this time we'll go to testimony from our staff with a summary of the staff report. Turn it over to Kim.
So just before I do that, I just wanted to give a couple clarifications. So just to follow up on what Mike was saying about the decommissioning estimate, so the state did reduce that to 100%, so it wouldn't be 150% of the engineer's estimate, it would be 100%, and that is, a new estimate needs to be submitted every 10 years to be reevaluated, through the life of the project. As far as the impervious surface, because I know that was a question that came up, the county does consider gravel drives to be impervious, so that would be included in the calculation along with the equipment pad and the piles themselves, but the panels are not included in the impervious calculations. And then just following up on the buffer, the vegetative buffer, so applicant is correct that none of the vegetative buffers were required because the facility is set more than 500 feet from any right-of-way and from any residence, so that was just an added courtesy. The state requires that the facility be at least 150 feet from any surrounding residence, and if within 500 feet, then that's when we require that buffer. So that was just an added protection from the residences there. So as was mentioned, the property is zoned A1 Agriculture District, which is one of the allowable districts that the state has for siting commercial solar energy facilities. Most of the surrounding area is agricultural as well. There is residential use to the south, but as I mentioned, this facility has been sited far enough away that it's more than double what is required by the state. Surrounding land use, surrounding land use, as I mentioned, mostly agricultural other than the residential uses to the south. And the future land use designation for this site is agricultural as well. I think that's all I have.
Does anyone on the board have any questions for staff? No? Okay. So now at this time, anyone who's a member of the public, if you would like to make a statement, you have 3 minutes to make a statement regarding this petition. Again, when you come up to the microphone, you need to identify yourself, your name and your address, and then you could give your statement, and I'll just be timing you. So is there anybody in the audience who'd like to? Yes, yeah, now's your time, yes, yes ma'am.
Once again, Renee Hill, 17910 Harmony Road, Marengo, Illinois. I am a Coral Township Township trustee. I'm here on behalf of Coral Township and Coral Township Supervisor Bill Damish. Regarding the petition, a letter has been sent out. I brought extra copies. I'll give those to you. For some reason, we were provided erroneously the wrong number. We have 018 and it should be 017. Is that correct? For the Senate.
We're doing both of those today,
Okay.
017 and 018.
Well, this in particular is 017.
Yes.
Are you Coral or Seneca Township?
Coral.
That's the
Because-
next one, that's 018.
Okay, then,
Oh,
okay.
yeah. So this one's in Seneca Township. So as soon as we finish this hearing, we're going to
Then
move
we're
right
gonna do the
away
next
into the
one.
next
Okay.
one.
All right, awesome.
So does anyone have a comment regarding this petition in Seneca Township? Okay.
Gina LaFever, 17,000 Secor Road in Woodstock. So, a solar industrial complex in a neighborhood. Why? Why do we have to be here to defend our lifestyle? This company doesn't live here, doesn't shop here, doesn't contribute to McHenry County or the local people. We do. We are the economic engine. We are paying taxes, we shop here, we dine here, we use the local vendors, we invest, and we love our neighborhood. Let's face some truth. One of you on the board will probably not be here in 10 years. Probably 2 of you will probably not here in 20 years. So what happens to this complex will be in the hands of the next generation to come. They get to take the power out somewhere in Chicago, and we take the effect out here. Everything is driven by money. Can renewable energy change our lives? You save on your electric, but your gas is through the roof, your groceries are out of control, and people are taxed out of their homes. Where's the long-term value? Agriculture is the heartbeat of America and our country and townships. This soil is not regenerated, it's a gift. And some of the best in the world is right here. Solar industry is $1 trillion business. Its real value is still being studied. We use empty parking lots, why not? Why can't you use a building the tops of an Amazon distribution center? That would be the place for something like this. We are agriculture, we are a farm community, we are agritourism. You know why thousands of people come to this area in particular? Our apple orchards, Cody's Pumpkin Patch, the North Union Prairie Farm, the Train Museum, Von Bergen's, the Autumn Drive, car shows, literally thousands of people come to this area. They're pouring millions into our community. People come from the cities and the suburbs because they long to see the country, the space, the nature, the sky. In one weekend, over $1 million is generated in this area, and then we are supposed to install a solar industrial complex. You can say no. We can debate this law because we have grounds to stand on. Do you honestly believe that if the soil is being contaminated or the water is being infected, they're going to rip up these panels in full depth and put the land back to where it was being productive? I don't think so. Let's be the leaders in this whole solar idea. We can be intelligent and take a new approach to power, and we can do it by the law. So please consider this strongly and think about the community, and we can work in with the law. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to make a statement?
My name is Sandra Schultz, and I live at 5808 Dunham Road. I'd like to use my 3 minutes to reiterate all the valid points that have already been put forth by other concerned taxpayers, and especially the information that has been gathered and forwarded to you by my neighbors Joy and Stephen Ganvik. The Ganviks have been diligent in their research and have also contacted experts to put forth numerous reasons of why the Ocock site is not a responsible choice for a solar factory. Anyone that is familiar with the area knows that we have issues with shallow water tables, and the solar fields would pose a very real threat of aquifer contamination. Aside from the noise and the glare that would be created by the fields, these solar fields are in fact injurious to the use and enjoyment of my property and those around me. It was mentioned in the last meeting that the Dean Street proposal was not in anyone's backyard, so a yes vote was justified. Well, this proposal site is in my backyard, and it definitely would have a negative effect on my property values. 32 years ago, my husband and I bought this property. Oh my God, I'm gonna get emotional. We built our home, we raised our girls, and we have enjoyed our little piece of heaven. We worked hard to build equity, and it is naive to think that the solar field will not reduce the value of my home to any prospective buyer. I'm not against solar energy, however, this site has more negatives than positives, and there are more responsible sites. I know that you feel the solar energy laws tie your hands, however, I would love to see a no vote on record, so at least I can appreciate your support as a McHenry County resident and as a taxpayer. I don't know why I'm crying, I'm so sorry.
Don't worry about it. It's your property. Anyone else want to make a statement? Okay. So I'm going to ask the petitioner now, if we vote today, we have only 5 people here today. You need 5 votes for a positive recommendation to the county. Is it okay that we vote today? It's up to you.
You're entitled to 7.
Yeah, you're entitled to 7 people.
What's the procedure if a vote doesn't occur today?
We would then continue this hearing to another day, and the other people would listen to the transcript or listen to the recording, and then we would vote on the other day. So if you want to, we can just proceed to the other petition, hear that petition, and then we would just vote on the next day that's available. It would just be our voting meeting on that day, or else we can vote on this petition and then move to the next one and hopefully get through it and vote, but, you know, we'll just see how things go.
Okay, yeah, I would be in favor of moving to the next petition, and then I guess if we have time at the end, we can make that decision at the end, or?
Okay. sounds good.
Madam Chairman, request a brief pause.
Yes. Your request is granted. So we'll take a 5-minute pause and then we'll start with the second petition and hear that as well for the one in New Coral Township. call the meeting back to order. We are now going to hear application 2023-018. This is an application from ASD Coral IL Solar LLC. It's a conditional use permit to allow for a commercial solar energy facility. The property consists of approximately 27.177 acres and is located on the south side of Hemmington Road, approximately 4,750 feet west of the intersection of Hemmington and McHugh Roads in Coral Township. As part of PIN number 17-03-300-008, part of 17-03-400-004, and part of 17-10-200-001. The petition has been reviewed and the following items have been reviewed prior to today's hearing. The publisher's certificate of publication from a newspaper is dated April 29, 2023, and thereby meets ordinance requirements. The affidavit of posting was signed and the date posted was May 1, 2023. The affidavit of mailing was signed and the date mailed was April 27, 2023, and thereby meets the ordinance requirements. The survey has been checked against the petition, the legal notice, and the publication in the newspaper, and all three match. The filing fees have been paid, the endangered species consultation has been received, and the McHenry County Soil and Water Conservation District report has been received. I'm not going to introduce the board members because you've all been introduced, or I won't go through the way the hearing works since you have all heard that. So I will again swear in anyone who wants to give a statement or ask a question. All those who would like to do so, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, so I will turn it over to the petitioner, and I would ask, would you like to incorporate the general information about your company and solar farms in general and trackers and all that sort of thing into this hearing as well?
Yes, I would.
Okay, and as well as the standards in the ordinance for solar farm that you included in your application, would you like to incorporate those as well?
Correct, yes, I would like those incorporated into the record.
Okay. Well, I would go ahead and turn it over to you then. Anything specific for this location and this site plan? So go ahead and cover, and anything else that you deem necessary.
Great, yep, so just to reiterate, my name is Mike Larkin, project manager on the development team at AMP Energy. I've given the brief synopsis of AMP Energy and what we do. I've also given a synopsis of the tentative project schedule for this project, ASD Coral Illinois Solar LLC. We would expect a very similar project development schedule as I previously showed for ASD Seneca, assuming, like I said, it's a pretty optimistic schedule, assuming the state approves our project this year, and we're quick to move on our permits and everything else. And that being said, the same decommissioning details apply here. We'd be going for the estimate. We'd have to provide some sort of financial surety. It would have to be up to the standards of the county code and the agricultural impact mitigation agreement. And similar to ASD Seneca, here at ASD Coral, we are planning to incorporate the agrivoltaic component of sheep grazing and the pollinator-friendly component of the species we select for the undergrowth. Yeah, I'll just go up to the site plan again and walk through the specifics here. I will say this road's a little wider than what we had at ASD Seneca. This gravel road is 26 feet in width. That was per feedback with a conversation with the Coral Township Highway Department. I spoke to someone named Bob, and they made it clear that their minimum access width is 26 feet, so that's why this access road is a little wider. And we'll have to eventually coordinate with the highway office there for a driveway permit, should this project move forward. Some additional details on this project that make it some additional things to consider beyond the ASD Seneca project here. But for ASD Coral, as you can see, we have our apron gravel access road coming off of Hemmingson Road. This is actually an existing road that crosses the railroad tracks. There's 2 railroad tracks here. They are owned and maintained by Union Pacific. And the southern track is actually used by the Illinois Railway Museum for their tours, coming from the museum and heading southeast here and then turning around. Other than that, we also surveyed ASD Seneca, didn't find any wetlands. This project, though, does have wetlands. You can see one that was identified here, and the associated, this is like a more perennial standing water situation where this is more hydric soils, but it extends all the way out where vegetation currently exists, basically where it's not farmed already. So that makes sense, and so we're avoiding all of that. There's also an underground gas line that runs through the site, has a kink, slight change in direction to the tracks here. There's a transmission line that runs through the site, indicated by this area here. We're planning to avoid
When you
those.
say this area here, just for the benefit of those that are listening, will have to listen, will you just be more specific and where you're pointing to?
Certainly. So we're assuming 100-foot width of that easement for transmission. So this orange solid line is the center of that right-of-way, and then these dashed lines are the edges of that 100-foot right-of-way. Same with the gas line here. I believe we
And
were...
you're talking about east of the panels and south of the panels, correct?
Correct, yes. The electrical line is east and south of the panels. The gas line is also south and east of the panels, as they are currently lined up. But yeah, so you can see the fence line similar to the fence line we were employing at ASD Seneca here for ASD Coral. The fixed non-ag fence just goes right up against the edge of the right-of-way, and we're planning to just avoid it and entirely not impact those right-of-ways. For the railroad crossing itself, this is under the jurisdiction of Union Pacific. We have a tentative reimbursement agreement with them right now. It's not executed, but we have the form document in front of us, and that just allows them to execute a contract with us that promises that we'll provide some set amount of money so they can do the necessary engineering work to study what this crossing would be. Obviously, like I said, there's an existing gravel road here, but we'd have to widen it slightly. So that's one aspect. And then the other aspect is the electrical connection itself. So as you remember, here's the equipment pad. It's a concrete pad hosting the inverter, transformer, combiner boxes. It's converted to alternating current and put into an underground line signified by the dashed red line parallel to the access road. Goes north of the site, out of the fence line, continuing somewhat parallel to the road here. This is, you'll see it runs under this. This is an existing raised building. I believe this is a concrete foundation that sort of looks like gravel at this point because it's falling apart. But yeah, old existing structure that was here that's basically just an existing concrete pad at this time. But it would be going through that, going up onto riser pulls. These riser pulls host the electrical equipment to get it connected to the existing distribution grid, which runs along Hemmingson Road here, and that is the 34.5 kilovolt line. It will have to go across the tracks. Union Pacific is requiring us to do an underground connection, so it will be a bored hole across the tracks, across the width of both tracks, and so it will remain. It'll go above ground for the pool equipment, but then back underground for the transect across the tracks here, and then connecting to the existing utility pool above ground. So that agreement is in process right now with Union Pacific, And once they finish up their side of the engineering, we'll have some more details and what that will look like in terms of required conduit and how far off the sides of the railroad we have to bore under. Similar to ASD Seneca, ASD Coral has north to south oriented panels hosted on single axis trackers that track from east to west throughout the day. You can see, like I said, they're north to south oriented. And the row spacing here, I believe, is a bit tighter at just about 15 feet. There's a gate with a Knox box as the only access to the site along the proposed gravel access road. There's a turnaround here down at the equipment pad. Let's see if there's anything else here. So this property is currently managed by a tenant farmer. The landowner owns this parcel. That's why 3 parcels were mentioned, because we're in this parcel, we're a little bit in this parcel, and then I believe this parcel right here extends over the railroad tracks, so we're technically in that too. This connection goes up here and hits the very corner of this parcel, so this is also technically part of the project. But we have this parcel to work with up here, but you can see this aqua blue sort of hash marks. That is floodplain, and we look to avoid developing in floodplain for obvious reasons. So we decided to site all of the array south of the tracks for this particular site. I spoke with the ground supervisor at the Illinois Railway Museum, and we were going back and forth on, what the Illinois Railway Museum finds important, and obviously they want to continue giving tours along the track and want to preserve the agricultural nature of this portion of the county here. We included this pretty extensive vegetative screen that basically runs along the entire northern portion of the site between the array and the railroad track itself to help obscure some of the views from the track. We're also looking at alternate access. The Illinois Railway Museum owns a lot of these parcels around. We're looking for a potential easement through one of their parcels to maybe, if they're concerned about the crossing, but they're not really concerned about that. They just were mentioning about view sheds, so we didn't end up going with that route, and we ended up sticking to the existing crossing that occurs there. I think that's all I got for this slide. There's one more slide if you want to go to it. I can finish. And so predicted annual generation, just under 10,400 megawatt hours a year. In Illinois, on average, that could power just over 11,000 homes a year. And we estimate the annual tax revenue to be just under 32 grand for this particular project. And that's the conclusion of my presentation.
Okay, we'll start with questions, starting my right, Mr. Everly.
Thank you. Do you also have the option to purchase this property as with Seneca?
We do not. We have this under a lease option. That is, let me just make sure I say the right thing here, 20 years with up to 4 5-year extensions.
And just to reiterate what you said before, the vegetative buffer that you put in was at the request of the Illinois Railway Museum. It was not required by statute or by our ordinance?
No, we had originally proposed, at least between the tenant farmer's residence and the array itself, as a courtesy to them. They're technically on the parcel, so I don't think per the county ordinance that we needed to do that, but we're originally thinking that. And then, yeah, like I said, I talked to the Illinois Railway Museum. They noted that as their primary concern, so we extended that vegetative screen along the entire sort of north length there. And yep, that was outside of the county requirements.
Thank you. And you said the annual tax revenue is $31,845 once the array is built. Do you know what it is currently?
I'd have to look. I believe it's in the single digits of thousands, maybe 2,000 a year.
Because, can you explain a little bit about what happens once you electrify a solar farm and what happens to the property taxes on A1 land?
Sure, yeah, so it's currently assessed as a farm for agricultural production. And so I'm not sure how the county, if they have like an established rate or if it's based on production of crops or just acreage of certain type of agricultural lands. But yeah, there's a lower sort of valuation on acreage of farm producing land versus electrical productive land. So yeah, this would be recategorized under the assessment of probably, like I said, I think it was solar energy system or distributed generation energy system. But yeah, that has a different tax rate. I believe the state has set guidance at $218,000 per megawatt DC. So that rate would be applied times the capacity, which is I think just under 7.5 again for this one. No, yeah, it's like 7.25 megawatts DC, and so it would be that 218,000 multiplied by that, and then there's the there's a rate taken off of that, and then there's the I believe the mill rate or the assessed rate applied to that, and that ends up being your final tax bill. So yeah, there's a state guidance where these type of systems they evaluate at 218,000 per megawatt DC.
So it's substantially more than the current A1 row crop rate, and that goes right back into the county and the township.
Correct.
That's all I have, thank you.
Mr. Schnapper.
Yes, sir, I'd like to ask you, have you personally ever been on a job site where installation is in progress?
I have, just one. It was not in Illinois though.
Doesn't matter. When the materials come in, how are they delivered? Are they typically like flatbed semi?
That's correct, yeah. Flatbed semi is the majority of panels, also the racking pilings, the I-beams, flatbed semi. I believe it depends on the site. It's typically 2 or 3 weeks of delivery, depending on if everything's coming in at the same time or various times. But it's about 3 to 4 flatbeds per megawatt.
So we have how many megawatts?
7.25 DC, so that's the actual panel megawattage, yep.
So probably at least a dozen semis, roughly.
Correct.
Wouldn't hold you to the exact number. All right, that gives me a good idea. That's all I have for right now. Thank you.
Mr. Eldridge.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. You had a site or an area set aside for construction scheduling of materials. Where would you be doing that on this site?
Good question. I'm sorry, I forgot to point it out. It's kind of overlapped by panels, but yeah, there's that black hash area just south of the residence on our property, and that's where we would plan to set everything. Obviously, that's overlapped by the array itself, but we could kind of set all the equipment there, have the parking there, and build the other edges of the array.
And sort of build your way out to that site.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's your presumption that the house there, which is a tenant farmer, will continue to be occupied throughout the construction?
Correct, yep, as far as we understand, they plan to stay there.
Roughly how long will the build out of this site take?
Our construction schedule could take anywhere from, I'd say 2 to 4 months, probably at least 3 months, given we're always, there's always some inverter or transformer that is taking longer than expected, and that's kind of like the final puzzle piece to put together. So really the period of heaviest activity is probably 6 weeks. And that's bringing in all the equipment, the piling itself. A site like this probably takes 2 weeks, Monday through Friday, of pounding in the pilings. But beyond that, then it's just, fastening everything on top and putting the tables together, pouring the concrete for the equipment pad, placing all that equipment. But yeah, probably the biggest nuisance and noisiest part of the construction time, piling the posts, is a 2 or 3 week period. And like I said, anywhere from 2 to 4 months, but I would say 3 months is probably a more accurate minimum period of time.
Looking at the aerial photographs, it looks to me that with the exception of the tenant farmer's house, this is a fairly remote area and there aren't many residences very close to it. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, that is correct.
Now, once you have this up and running, am I correct that you'll be managing it day to day remotely by computer and other electronic means?
That is correct. So
Rarely, several times a year, there will be a couple of people just sort of to check things out, unless something goes wrong. And if something goes wrong, you have electronic monitoring, so you'll know about it right away, a lightning strike or whatever. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Cozen?
Thank you. The access to the site passes two distinct railroad companies for your description. One was the Illinois Railroad Museum and the other was the Union Pacific. Recollection may be fuzzy. Is access clear over the Railroad Museum property, or is there some ambiguity for that?
I believe the jurisdiction is with Union Pacific. Illinois Railway Museum has permission to, I believe, to use that southern line for the purposes of their tours and maybe getting trains in and out. But Union Pacific itself owns the right-of-way and is responsible for the upkeep and maintain of both rail lines. So it's their at their discretion. But so what we have right now is called a preliminary. Let me just make sure I get the name right here. Preliminary Engineering Services Reimbursement Agreement. So this is the agreement that would come before our licensed crossing agreement. And so this gets Union Pacific started, gets their engineers working on the specifics of the underground line crossing itself. And then they'll bill us for those costs, which we'll provide, and then they'll use those details to populate the exhibits of the licensed crossing agreement. So we're not at that step yet, but assuming we provide the money that Union Pacific needs to do this study and decide to move forward, then there shouldn't be any obstacles or issues with reaching the crossing agreement.
And that which is crossing the agreement is the utility-owned services, beginning with 3 poles, the underground to the tap point?
Yeah, and technically anything, so you see the circle north of the railway there? That's the existing pool along Hemmingson Road that we're connecting to. That's called the point of interconnection. Technically, or a point of common coupling. Typically, so everything along that line to the south is actually, our side of the project, so that's the electrical line that we own. But obviously it has to be up to the utility standards. And yeah, it is our responsibility to get that crossing agreement from Union Pacific and to engineer it according to their standards.
So this is the second facility that you're connecting to the same substation as in the prior application?
Correct, yeah, this line extends to one substation further to the northwest and another to the southeast. They're both currently in study right now because we're not sure which substation is going to end up being the ultimate constraint of what can be provided on that line. But yeah, you're right. Yep, same circuit.
Excuse me, the substation tag on both site plans is the same, TESS 123 substation. So it is the same substation.
Yes, correct.
And are you looking at that substation for other properties in the area?
No, if these projects don't max out the capacity along that line, then maybe we'd potentially look for adding another, but I doubt that there will be any capacity left after these two projects are incorporated.
And maximum size of the installation crew during that construction process, what is the standard?
I would say probably at the max period of activity, so that would be either when everything's getting piled or when all the panels are being fit on and the conduits are being run. It's anywhere from, I'd say, 15 to 25 people on the site at a given time.
In the decommissioning process, you identified how you will be removing objects from the property. What happens to all the pollinators and the plants that are installed on the property?
So yeah, the equipment that goes out there to remove such components, probably will trample and rut a lot of the existing vegetation as it, has laid undisturbed for the period of the solar farm's lifetime. But the plan would be just to reestablish the undergrowth with, I guess we haven't decided on what that seed mix would look like, but probably just a more typical, deeper root vesicle like grass seed composition.
Or soybean or corn or whatever is there presently?
Yeah, I think, yeah. So the agricultural impact mitigation agreement might require us to lay some sort of grass or something to stabilize the soil. But yeah, you're right, it's kind of at the discretion of the landowner at that point. Like I said, kind of like if they want to keep the road or not, if they want us to stabilize and to establish a surface vegetation, then that would be up to them. Or if they want to go straight back into soybean or corn, then that's an option too, yep.
Were you aware that O'Hare Airport is using goats in terms of maintaining the landscape in and around O'Hare for 9 years now?
I was not, no.
That concludes my questions.
Okay, since this is a different location, I just want to go over the permits, the standards for a conditional use permit with you again on this site. So is this site situated so that the proposed use is compatible with the existing and planned future development of the area?
Yes, yeah, this is a pretty sparsely populated portion of the county. It's tucked back here along a railroad, other than the Illinois Railway Museum directly to the west. I would say it's been properly sited and is a good use for this portion of the county. And like I said, it could eventually go back to basically any other developed use after the lifetime. So if it wants to go back to agriculture, then it could. And so, yep, I believe it's a compatible use for this area.
Will the establishment, maintenance, and operation of this conditional use be detrimental or endanger the public health, safety, morals, comfort, or general welfare of the neighboring vicinity?
This use will not endanger the safety of the general public. Excuse me. Like I said, solar developments are low profile, low noise, low nuisance, no leaching of chemicals into the groundwater. All the components are contained within the panels themselves that are pretty sturdy and have 25-year warranties. There will be emergency access. Say if there were some sort of catastrophic failure or a fire broke out on the equipment, it would likely just be isolated to the equipment pad and not near any structures or property or assets. Yeah, it doesn't emit any gases in the air. And allows most of the site to remain permeable to allow water to get back into the aquifer and recharge it.
Will the conditional use be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the purposes already permitted?
No, it will not. Most of the uses around it are Illinois Railway Museum owned parcels that are used for agriculture through leases. This should have no effect on that. And then the Illinois Railway Museum themselves use the track for tours. We will work to our best to mitigate disturbance in view shed from the track itself. So that continued use should not be affected, and the crossing of the tracks itself won't deem the tracks unusable for any period of time, so that should have no effect on the continued operation of the railroad. And the wetlands are avoided and not disturbed, so the continual filtration and processing of groundwater by those wetlands should remain undisturbed.
Will the conditional use substantially diminish and impair property value within the neighborhood?
The use will not substantially reduce property value of adjacent land, especially with most abutting parcels here being used strictly for agricultural farmland, and for then the railroad itself. Yeah, it should have no impact given the low nuisance and the ability to produce power and eventually be decommissioned and brought back to its former use.
Are adequate utilities, access road, drainage, and other necessary facilities being provided?
As I've explained, we propose widening the access road to make that an adequate access. We are proposing the utility access to connect us to the grid to actually supply the power to the grid. But no new water or sewer connections are proposed, so that should have no effect on those things. And so, yeah, adequate access to utilities is provided.
Are adequate measures being taken to provide ingress and egress so designed as to minimize traffic congestion and hazard on the streets? I know you dealt with the driveway, but I think you covered that. But
Yep, yeah, so the busiest period will be the construction period. Hemmingson Road itself is not a very busy road, and there is that bend there, so it is somewhat of a slowdown point, but yeah, there will be plenty of apron there for turning off the road. Vehicles should be able to quickly, get across the tracks into the construction staging area, and yeah, it should have no effect on traffic outside of the construction period.
will the conditional use in all other respects conform to the applicable regulations of the zoning district in which it's located?
Yes, it will comply to the applicable regulations of the zoning district, given the setback is in compliance and the height constraint is in compliance with the constraints of the regulations. Yep, yes.
Is the conditional use reasonably in the interest of public welfare?
Yes, we all live on the same planet. We're all interested in reducing carbon emissions. This will be an opportunity to further offset coal plants within ComEd's distribution infrastructure here with clean, green, carbon-free solar generation. So we'll be providing this utility and power to the local community without adding additional carbon dioxide and greenhouse gas emissions that ultimately affect our climate, which affects obviously the farming community, the bottom line here, and being dependent on the weather to produce effectively.
And are adequate measures being taken to provide protection to groundwater recharge and groundwater quality?
Yes, the panels themselves are very contained. There should be no leakage of any materials from said panels. Very little introduction of impervious surface, so there should be plenty of water still making it into the ground, as it did before the project existed. And the bounds of the project itself avoid all known wetlands and floodplain to avoid any impacts on those important pieces of the water system here.
Does staff have any questions for the petitioner?
Yeah, just a couple. You had mentioned that the Coral Township Highway Commissioner was asking for a 26-foot width drive. Is that for the entire length of the access drive into the site or just at the entrance?
That is for the entire length.
Did they indicate that that was a requirement, or typically we see 20 feet, to appease the fire district and their equipment. A lot of times the townships will indicate a certain width as an entrance to the site, but I didn't know if there was any potential to I guess, narrow that down once it gets into the site, or if that would make a difference to the project at all.
Excuse me. I did speak to the the fire protection district. They also reiterated the 20-foot width requirement. But yeah, I'm sorry, I wish I had the last names written here. I spoke to a Bob at
Wagner. Bob Wagner?
That sounds right. Bob Wagner at Coral Township Highway Department. I think their office is just actually north of this site, a little further off. But he made it clear to me that the whole width to the equipment pad itself has to be 26 feet, plus the turnaround to allow sort of our flatbed construction vehicles to get in, the delivery flatbed trucks. This conversation was a couple months ago, so I mean, I could definitely check in and see if there's any.
Yeah, I mean, it can be coordinated during permitting. I just was curious because typically we don't see it that wide within the sites, so I was just curious. And then do you know what the setback is from Hemmingson Road to the northwest portion of the site, the panels there? Is it less than 500 feet? Sorry, I don't have this.
So the north side of Hemmingson Road to the panels.
Yeah, so where you have the vegetative buffer shown along the northwest portion of the property there, is it less than 500 feet from Hemmingson Road to that point?
Yes, I believe it is less than 500
So
feet.
I know you mentioned that the Illinois Railway Museum would prefer to have the vegetative buffer there, but even if they hadn't mentioned it, that buffer would still be required?
Oh, I thought that was within 500 feet of parcels that have residential.
Or within the right-of-way. So,
Oh, right-of-way,
yeah,
yep, okay.
within 500 feet of a right-of-way, so I just wanted to make sure that was clear that that is required either way at that point. And then the only other question I had was just if you had any idea of what the proposed height of the vegetation would be for that buffer there?
Yeah, could you switch to that? I think we have a vegetative appendix slide, maybe. Oh, sorry. It's a little different. So I know.
Yeah, it would be the same. Oh, here. Is it the same as
Yep.
the Seneca site? Okay.
Yeah, so let me just, actually I got the same presentation here I can read. So our biggest species there, that would be the Kentucky coffee tree, and then the white spruce, Table Mountain pine. I was talking to our landscape consultant, and I believe he said the Kentucky coffee tree gets to anywhere from 60 to 80 feet mature maximum height. That being said, we would expect these trees to reach mature height probably shortly after the operational lifetime of the facility itself. But yeah, anywhere from 60 to 80 feet.
And is this site lower than where the railroad would be? If people were going along the railroad, would they be above the site?
It looks like these sites, is, sorry, these contour readings are really small. It's either a bowl or a hill. I need to, 18580, so it is a hill. So the southeast corner of the array itself does rise above the elevation of the railway right-of-way. The more western side of the array itself is a very light gradient, so about on the same elevation as the railway right-of-way, but maybe slightly higher as you get further south in the site.
All right, that's all I have.
Okay, any members of the public have questions about this site? Yes, ma'am.
For real question.
Real question, okay. Come on up.
3 times the charm. Renee Hill, 17910 Harmony Road, Marengo. Do you have a contract with the Illinois Railway Museum concerning the tracks, crossing the tracks, timing of your construction during Thomas the Tank Engine time? It's a very busy place. The second thing was, just so that the board knows, the actual closest intersection is Olson Road, not McHugh. Olson Road puts this whole project right smack backed up to the Railway Museum. Just so that you know, it looks like farmland there, but the Railway Museum is there. We have all the tracks and the train and the switching station, all of that stuff is all right. It's all right there. So I'm also concerned that there's no
Just a
vegetative.
question now. Your concerns can be, you can talk about those later, but your question too.
So would there be vegetative screening on the west side of the project? Thank you.
There's currently no vegetative screening proposed for the west side of the project. I believe there is, albeit that it does look thin, but an existing tree line on the property line there. No, we're not pursuing a contract with the Illinois Railway Museum. Like I said, I believe the whole entire right-of-way is controlled by Union Pacific, so the contract would be executed with them. And no, we have not executed that contract yet. We're at the step before that, which is the reimbursement agreement, which allows them to obligate us to pay for the engineering work that will go into one of the exhibits of said crossing agreement. So we're in the sort of the second or third step of that, but no, we do not have that agreement yet, but that would be with Union Pacific. And that agreement will detail like timing of construction and when certain things happen. So I'm not sure what kind of partnership Illinois Railway Museum has with Union Pacific to allow use of that right of way, but I'm sure their schedule and their things will be kind of factored into that agreement and when we're allowed to disturb that corridor to get what we need there.
Okay, any other questions? Yes. Please limit your questions to this site and anything you didn't address before.
Yep. Gina LaFever, 17,000 Seaport Road in Woodstock. So my question is, it's my understanding that there's a dust, like a silica, that comes off. Is that correct?
Off the panels?
Yes.
No, not that I'm aware. They can get dusty. There is sometimes, I want to say, there's a coating that's sometimes put on panels to reduce dustiness, but more often than not, they're just washed off with water maybe twice a year.
Okay, but I heard that there's a silica that also comes off of the material that the panels are made with.
I'm sure if they were damaged, the crystalline structure of silica could fracture and pieces could come off, but they are pretty sturdy panels. But no, not under normal conditions would we expect dust to be coming off panels.
Okay. My question also is, so fire departments aren't currently prepared to handle a solar fire. So is that something that your company will be educating and studying and helping all the local fire departments?
Yeah, we will be required to kind of walk through with them, show them where like the switches are and the regulators, and how to obviously access the site and where the equipment will be on that equipment pad. So when, if there is a fire, we are able to remotely switch it, turn off the bus bar and disconnect power. So hopefully it would be an isolated incident. But yeah, we haven't had any issues with, I'll say in other states, with commencing projects, other than we do a lot of our projects couple battery energy storage with. This project has no battery energy storage, but that is a big black box for emergency services and how to handle that and how to address it. I believe the inverters here also, with a lot of our battery energy storage systems, which is separate from this, have like self-suppressing, I think it's called gas X or something. It's a
The
foam
fire
on the
departments
inside.
don't actually know how to handle that right now. So over the winter months, there's 3 to 6 months of no sun. Why do you pick Illinois if you don't have sun for 3 to 6 months?
It's a good question. There is, believe it or not, there is a high percentage of visible radiation and radiation that's be able to converted to electricity on the panels that goes through an overcast cloud deck.
It must be minimal compared to a regular sunny day.
It's definitely, only a proportion of what we could produce at max sunshine.
So why do you choose Illinois?
We typically target states that have community solar programs. So Illinois does have a good program here, the traditional community solar program, through the adjustable block program that I explained earlier. And so yeah, we typically target specific markets, and Illinois has been trying to get a program up and running for probably the past 5 years. They had their Illinois Solar for All program before that.
That's okay.
We were unsuccessful in getting in that one, but yep, that's why we're here now, to target that program. And
Doesn't make sense.
Anyone else have a question? Again, anything that hasn't been, that you didn't ask before, specific to this project?
My name is Sandy Schultz, 508 Dunham Road. Considering the ruralness of this area and these proposed areas, my concern is the fire departments. If this were to catch fire, because we do have such dry conditions here, and you're talking about all the vegetation and everything
Get to
going
your
on
question,
around it.
please.
And fire departments around, it has been broached and that they would just let it burn. How then does your company take care of what's left? If this were to start on fire and burn to the ground, how then does your company, besides the toxicity in the air from the panels, how does your company then fix the field, or would they, or how does it, is it decommissioned, what happens?
that's a good question. I have not worked at AMP where this has happened yet, but so I'm not 100% sure. But these projects do have insurance policies. All the equipment has warranties and is rated. So if through an investigation they see there was no wrongdoing on our end, then I believe any of that damage would be covered through our policy, and we'd be able to replace that equipment. Whether we do that to continue the lifetime of the project, I guess would be dependent on us evaluating the facility, seeing what it's producing, seeing what we expect it to produce after all the damaged stuff is replaced, and see if we want to continue or have that be a catalyst for decommissioning.
Okay, if no other questions, we'll move to the staff report with Kim.
Okay, as we mentioned, the property is zoned A1 agriculture district. Everything surrounding is agricultural as well. You'll see on the zoning map there are several properties listed as A1C. Those are the areas that are under conditional use permit for the Illinois Railway Museum. So they are kind of surrounding the property there. The current land use map does show agricultural on this property as well as surrounding areas. The blue shading is for government institutional use, again for the Illinois Railway Museum property. Future land use for this property is also designated for agriculture along with the surrounding areas. And I think I just had a couple of photos here just in case anybody needed to see what the entrance to the site looks like there. But this project site does meet all of the siting requirements by the state, and staff has no further comments.
Anyone on the board have questions for staff? Okay, now we'll go to statements from the public. Finally, you get a chance. I'm sorry you had to come up so many times.
Well, I didn't get my steps in today.
We're getting in your steps.
Thank you. Once again, Renee Hill, 17910 Harmony Road, Marengo. I'm just going to read this statement from Coral Township, Township Supervisor Bill Damish. May 15, 2023, dear Chairman Stone and ZBA members, both the Coral Township Board and the Coral Township Planning Commission oppose the request of petition 2023-018 for a conditional use permit to build a commercial solar facility for the following reasons. 1. This request is not consistent with Coral Township land use map, which designates the proposed site as medium-density residential. 2. A conditional use permit with no time limit, as stated in the staff assessment on page 461, is in effect an actual zoning change. 3. The location is adjacent to a designated green space natural area according to Township land use map. This area is earmarked by the McHenry County Conservation District as the final portion of the Huntley Union Marengo bike hiking trail. 4. We do not oppose the idea of exploring other alternatives to clean energy. What we do oppose is not having the guidelines for the location of such facilities. We understand the state is making restrictions of solar applications more difficult. The Coral Township Board feels the normal process of valued input to the county and state through proper channels is lacking when considering the township for spot zoning such as this. Furthermore, 5. We need protection from the state and county to help implement a future look into the longevity and use restrictions of such farms. In the 25 to 35 plus year use, what will happen? Who will be held responsible? Could the landowner or the county be burdened with a huge disposal problem? Alas, nothing for us to say at this level. Thank you very much.
Does anyone else have a comment that they would like to make this time?
I do.
Gina Lefevre, 17,000 Secor Road in Woodstock. So again, you referred to the enjoyment and use of the area that we're talking about here. First of all, I go back and reiterate the fact that we have thousands of people come to the train museum, literally thousands, throughout the whole summer, definitely during Thomas the Train, and certainly during the Polar Express at Christmas time. We have thousands of people. So you talk about how this complements the enjoyment of use of the area. It does not. It has nothing to do with the way we use that area, nothing the way we look at the area. And again, may I reiterate, people come into this area because it's beautiful. They come in to see agritourism. They like the way the place looks. They like the way it feels. It gets them away from what they see every day. We use this area for other things, including bikes, snowmobiles, riding horses, and that is another part that this would not complement. Once you put those panels in there, all of that is taken away, everything. So you say it complements, it does not. I still truly question why an A1 agricultural area could even be considered for an industrial use. I know that's not something you have an answer to, but I still truly question that. And I do question the true financial value to the community when it could reduce the amount of money we have through the people who come into our area. It's something for all of you to consider. Like I said, you will not be here in 10 years, at least one of you won't, and you definitely will have 2 or 3 of you not here in 20 years. The repercussions are not left for you, but for the generations to follow. I know you have laws. Laws can be challenged, and the zoning board in particular is not breaking the law by not supporting this. You are truly giving your opinion to the county board, and we would really respect you really considering this and denying it. Thank you.
Would anyone else in the public like to make a comment? Okay. Would you like to make a closing statement, sir?
Sure. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, thanks for the opportunity
to have me today at this hearing. And ladies and gentlemen of the public, thanks for taking time to participate in this hearing and answer and asking good questions, making statements. AMP Energy is excited for these projects that we've proposed in McHenry County here. We believe these are pretty low impact, low profile, and relatively long-term, but still relatively temporary developments to, this precious area of the state here that has a lot of valuable agricultural soils and production and way of life. And I believe, these projects are a good balance of helping preserve those qualities while also providing carbon-free electricity source and more reliable electrical infrastructure to the local grid that will ultimately end up upgrading to incorporate these projects and provide a better tax base to the local governments here in terms of assessed tax revenue. So we're excited for the opportunity to bring these projects here, and I thank you all for voicing your concerns as they are important, and we'll do our best to address what we can here. Thank you.
Okay, this ends the hearing portion of this petition. Now we'll be looking at a date because we're not going to have time we have to be out of this building by 4:30. We're not going to be able to vote on both of these. And we only have 5 people today. So I'm looking at the 12th or the 13th of July for the people here on the board as well as the petitioners. That will work. It's a Wednesday or Thursday. All members of the board available on either of those dates? Sure.
Got nothing on the calendar.
Okay. So Mike, it's up to you. If either of those days work, which day you would prefer? Because we have a room available for both of those days.
Just making sure I don't have a wedding that I'm at. It's the weekend before, but it's far away. Is the 13th a Wednesday, you said?
13th is a Thursday.
Thursday?
12th is the Wednesday.
Yeah, the 13th is probably better for me.
So we will continue this for a voting meeting to Thursday, July 13th at 1:30 in this room. Okay, thank you. Okay, whole meeting is adjourned.
And what does the format of that look like?